Hi guys, so I'm going to read to you lesson 2 in our social studies for content this week. So yesterday you should have read and listened to the video that Mrs. Vaccaray had posted. Now I'm going to read to you lesson 2. So it says lesson 2, a new home in America. So let's envision it. List the items you would pack in your bag if you were moving to a new home. All right, we're going to start. People move to a new place for many reasons. Some need to find work, some want freedom or a safe place to live, and some hope to earn more money. Some move closer to be with their family. So, the promise of America. People who move from one country to settle in a different country are called immigrants. Immigrants started coming to North America hundreds of years ago to start new lives. Some of the first immigrants were people from Spain, France, and England. In the 16s and 1700s, they crossed the Atlantic Ocean to come to North America. They settled in the Southeast, the Northeast, and even as far as Canada. In 1783, the United States won its freedom from Great Britain. At that time, the nation was made up of 13 states, and all of the states were located in the East. The West was a huge open land with many rivers and mountains. The soil was rich for farming, and gold could be found in the streams and rocks. While people were looking for gold, they also found other minerals such as silver. People found many ways to earn money in the West. So let's look at here. It says many jobs were available in the United States. So this is a thing that tells how people were looking for jobs. So these are the types of jobs that were available. Carpenter, stair builder, house and sign painter, blacksmith that makes horseshoes. So those were just some of the jobs that you could get back then. All right. So here's some of the new vocabulary we'll be learning. Immigrant, frontier, homestead, gold rush, and exclusion. So let's keep reading. In the mid-1800s, thousands of immigrants from Europe and Asia came to the United States. Most settled in cities along the east and west coast, where there were many jobs and places to live. Other immigrants bought or rented land to farm. Since the first Europeans arrived in North America, immigrants have had high hopes for their new home. They brought the skills and energy needed to make the country even greater. One immigrant, John Roebling, came from Germany to the United States in 1831. He built many bridges. One of his best-known bridges is the Brooklyn Bridge in New York City. Most European immigrants sailed across the Atlantic Ocean and into the New York harbor. One of the first things they saw there was the Statue of Liberty. Even today, it welcomes immigrants. So this says right here, the Statue of Liberty holds a lamp to welcome people to the United States. All right, Americans move west. As more immigrants came and cities became crowded, many people looked for more land in the American frontier. That's one of the words. A frontier is a region that forms the edge of a settled area. So the region that forms this edge of a settled area. People crossed steep mountains and wide rivers. The search for more land was dangerous. An explorer named Daniel Boone helped make this search easier. The Cumberland Gap Trail had been used by many Native Americans for many years. It ran through the Cumberland Mountains. The map below shows the Cumberland Gap Trail today. So here's that trail. It's in Virginia, Kentucky, and then it goes all the way to Tennessee. So here's the trail. Here's the town of the Cumberland Gap right here. So it says in 1775, Boone worked with 28 men to widen this Cumberland Gap Trail and add new paths. This new road was called the Wilderness Road. Wagons could now travel through the mountains. As a result, thousands of settlers and explorers traveled west beyond the Appalachian Mountains. In 1805, Zebulon Pike explored the Mississippi River. Davy Crockett began exploring present-day Tennessee in 1813. So let's see. All this green part is the Cumberland Gap National Historic Park. So that's park today. So the white dots, that is the Gap Trail that he created, that Daniel Boone helped create. All that white is trail that wagons could go through so people could get through the mountains. The Homestead Act. The number of settlers moving west grew after 1862. In that year, the United States government passed the Homestead Act. A homestead, that's another one of our words, is an area of land that includes a house and its buildings. The Homestead Act made it possible for many Americans to get 160 acres of land for very little money. The act helped people settle the land in the West. It also helped the country add new states. To be a homesteader, a person had to agree to build a house and to live on the land for 5 years. After that, the person would own the land. Thousands of families traveled west to find a new home. By the 1900s, there were 600,000 homesteaders in the West. Many homesteaders were immigrants. Others had been slaves in the South. By moving west, people could start new lives. They could farm and feed their families. They could start new communities and enjoy their freedom. Life for the homesteaders in West was difficult, though. They built homes using any materials they could find. They carried waters in buckets. They grew all their food. Neighbors were far from each other, so it was difficult to get help. Many people returned home because life on the frontier was so harsh. So here's a picture of a family. It says families could buy land to start a new life in the West. So that's how they traveled with the wagon. So this would be an example of a family that moved out west to start a new life. Immigrants from Asia. During 1848, gold was discovered in California. During the gold rush, thousands of people came from around the world to search for gold. So we click gold rush, a time period in the late 1840s when thousands of people came around the world to California to find gold. Many immigrants came from China during the gold rush. At first, Americans welcomed them. However, some Americans thought that Chinese immigrants were taking too many jobs. In 1882, the United States government passed the Chinese Exclusion Act. Exclusion means keeping people out of a place. So keeping people out of a place. This act stopped immigrants from China for 10 years. In the 1880s, Japan started allowing workers to move to the United States. Many Japanese immigrants lived in California and in Hawaii, which was not yet a state. Most worked on farms or fished. Some owned small businesses. However, Japanese immigrants faced some of the same problem as Chinese immigrants. So some of the Americans thought that they were taking too many jobs and they wanted to keep them out. So this is the Chinese immigrants needed special documents to work in the United States. So this is what someone from China would have so they can prove that they're allowed to work in the United States. All right, so that is your second lesson. So these are just some things to think about, okay? So use your facts to learn to draw conclusions about how each of these examples affected immigrants in the United States. So the Homestead Act, remember that was the act that allowed people to go out west and build a home and have 160 acres of land as long as they lived there for 5 years. Then the gold rush is when everyone wanted to move to California so they can find gold. And that caused a little bit of tension because a lot of Chinese immigrants came over to work and the Americans thought they were taking too many jobs. So then that started the Chinese Exclusion Act, which didn't allow Chinese then to come over to help find gold. So I hope you enjoyed this lesson, and tomorrow you'll get to hear from another third grade teacher of ours.